We open in the northern wastelands in age 764, as a galactic tyrant and his father land on Earth to get revenge against a certain monkey. However, when they arrive, they send out their henchmen to find this monkey, but they can't, and return empty-handed. The heroes of Earth were there but were hiding their energy to see what this tyrant, which is obviously Frieza, would do. Out of anger of not finding him, Frieza gives the order for his men to terrorize the planet, to draw the monkey out. Before his men can even take off to follow this order, Frieza's wish is granted. Goku, who has been watching what was going on with the help of King Kai, now stands in front of Frieza's men via the use of instant transmission. The tyrant then orders these men to attack Goku, but they are effortlessly taken out by him, without even needing to go Super Saiyan. Frieza's anger would just bubble up at this and go against the plan he had with King Cold, with him just rising up and charging a death ball, launching it at Goku shortly after. Goku would catch it in his hands at first, but eventually be pushed back down to the earth. From there, he would fire a Kamehameha into it, launching it back to where it hits into Frieza. Much like how Cooler died in his first movie, the Kamehameha and Death Ball pushes Frieza into the sun, where he perishes for good this time. King Cold, having watched this all, approaches Goku with the offer of him taking Frieza's place as his heir in his empire. Of course, Goku would refuse this offer, which would anger the king. He would go on to say that he only defeated his son because of that technique he used, and wouldn't have been able to do so without it. Goku, being who he is, would agree not to use the Kamehameha in their fight, and then the fight with King Cold would begin. Goku would easily block all of King Cold's attacks, and just blast him in the chest with a simple ki blast, since he agreed not to use the Kamehameha. As King Cold is now against the mountain with a hole through his chest, he goes through the same things he did with future Trunks. He starts with offering a planet, then a solar system, and then to change his ways. This would pique Goku's interest and ask if he was serious, to which the wounded monarch would of course agree. Goku would decide to let him go, but warn him if it's a trick like his son tried on Namek, he will kill him. King Cold, being smarter than the son, would head back to his ship and take off. Vegeta of course would try blasting down the ship to kill King Cold, but Goku stops him quickly, saying he deserves a chance just as much as Vegeta did during their fight. This timeline then goes much the same as the previous two parts, with King Cold coming out of the healing pod to find his empire in shambles. It is on the verge of collapse as word of his son's demise and his defeat is being spread around the empire, so planets are just rebelling and leaving his empire. He is essentially driven to the same desperate decision he had to make in the first part, which is granting more freedom and amenities to the planets within his empire. As explained before, with the rebelling planets having new freedoms, the revolts ended and production on these planets started to skyrocket. So, he decides to give these new freedoms not just to revolting planets, but to his whole empire as well. He does this not just because his empire is doing better, but maybe, for once, he likes seeing his men content for a change. As King Cold's empire continues to grow, he still comes to the same realization that while his empire is doing better financially, strength-wise it is worse than it ever was. There are some planets that rebelled and deserted completely, with him not sticking around to see how King Cold's empire changed for the better. So, he decides to work on expanding his empire again to get stronger people within his army. He'd also still end up promoting Banyu to his right-hand woman to help him with running his empire. An idea that sticks out to him would be going to Earth to try and get the Saiyans to join his empire. While it's a long shot on this happening, the worst that can happen is that he will say no. Of course, when King Cold and Banyu arrive, everyone including Goku is wary that he is just coming back for revenge. Vegeta would most likely try to go after Cold, but Goku would quickly stop him, still telling him to give Cold a chance, which leads the monarch to assure he is there on business and presents the gift he brought with him. As usual, none of them would know what to do with these materials and supplies, so Vegeta suggests they bring it to Capsule Corp. Once there, the meeting is taken over by Bulma, and the negotiations for the agreement are mainly decided between her and King Cold. His interest would still be piqued by the capsules when he sees them, so, when he came to the agreement, in return for supplies and help from the Empire with any threats they face, they will provide the capsules and help him when the Empire is facing a threat that would require their assistance in taking down. From there, King Cold goes and has a meeting with King Furry for this agreement to be officially made, for the planet to join his empire. As usual and as explained before, he would agree once finding out Goku and the others are in favor of this agreement going through. From there, King Cold would still set up the way to communicate with each other, and at Goku's request, swear to tell them when any threat he needs assistance with appears. Once the situation with Cooler starts happening, King Cold arrives on Earth to try and devise a plan along with the Dragon Team on how to deal with Cooler. However, this is when the news is told to King Cold and Banyu that Goku has fallen ill. He started clutching his chest one day and has been bedridden ever since. King Cold will send his best doctors he had on his ship to try and help Goku, but even they can't figure out what it is. Even if they could, it would be too late for them to develop a cure for the heart virus. King Cold sticks around on Earth to keep trying to help Goku, but unfortunately, it's no use. A couple days later we would then get a similar scene as we did in the Future Trunks special, with Gohan running back to his house. However, this time in the crowd outside of their house, King Cold and Banyu would be there as well. Though, once he reaches Goku's room, the news is told to him with Krillin telling the others. The Earth's greatest warrior, Goku, has succumbed to the heart virus. Unfortunately, with it being natural causes, he can't be revived with the Dragon Balls this time. With Goku now gone, King Cold wasn't sure what would happen with their agreement, as Goku was the main one supporting it. However, the Dragon Team would keep the agreement in place, as it's one of the last things Goku wanted to do. They would also go through with helping King Cold with Cooler, as it was something Goku would have wanted. That whole fighting plan goes the same as it did in the last part. However, the Yardratians and the Mechians went and joined Cold's empire, as Goku is gone. The Yardratians would have only agreed at Goku's request. No one can find New Namek as only King Kai knows where it is, and Goku is the only one who knew how to contact him. Regardless, Vegeta goes Super Saiyan together with King Cold to take down Cooler. Before Cooler was taken out, King Cold would still likely offer Cooler to join him, as they can be much better rulers if he does it the new way King Cold tried out. Though, as usual, Cooler thinks this is a disgraceful thing for his family to have stooped to and refuses, which leads to Vegeta finally getting a win and offing Cooler once and for all. With the defeat of Cooler happening, his empire is still in shambles, as the planets in his organization are left leaderless. Even the ones that left King Cold's empire and were forced into Cooler's would be in a rough place, as they went under the control of two tyrants in a short span of time. Their only options would be like the ones in the regular timeline, to either go on being alone or rejoin with the newly reformed Cold Empire, which because of the benefits of joining the Empire again, is the most likely choice they will make, though if King Cold wasn't mostly reformed, it's highly unlikely they would have rejoined his empire. Afterwards, at the request of Gohan, as they now have lost their greatest warrior, King Cold would stay on Earth to help protect it in case anything happened. He wouldn't be able to be as hands-on in his empire though, so he would send people he trusted to take care of matters. He would personally only go somewhere if he absolutely had to. He would also have decided to follow through on one of the last things Goku asked of him, which would have been to train, with him training alongside Banyu. After seeing Cooler's fifth form, he would train to unlock that form for himself. Gohan might potentially train with King Cold as well, as he was the one that requested him to stay. Gohan might learn a technique or two from him like the Death Beam and be slightly stronger from this extra training partner. Though, in the long run, it wouldn't really change anything in the ongoing struggle against the future androids. However, Gohan might have passed these techniques on to future Trunks as well, but even then, it doesn't really change anything. Around the time of the android attack, King Cold still hasn't achieved the fifth form like he set out to do. Anyway, on May 12th, page 767, androids 17 and 18 still arrive and begin their onslaught after killing Dr. Gero. Piccolo is the first one that tries fighting against them, however he falls at their hands, which takes Kami with him. Unfortunately, it also means they can no longer use the Dragon Balls anymore either. Vegeta is the next one to face against the threat, but even with his Super Saiyan power, he doesn't stand a chance. Next, King Cold tries to attack them, and he stands up against them for a little bit when he uses his full power. However, they slowly get bored of fighting the Monarch and off him as well. Any of King Cold's elites and soldiers that were present on the planet would have been wiped out as well. This includes Banyu. She would have tried to fight the androids at the same time as King Cold, so that it was a 2-on-2 fight. But this is in vain, as she is killed at the hands of the androids too. It's also likely King Cold's ship would have been destroyed by the androids, so they can't use it to try and get help from the remnants of Cold's empire. After the fall of King Cold, the rest of the fighters basically have no chance against the androids, but they still try to fight against them, no matter how pointless it is. Yamcha is the next warrior to try his luck at fighting the cyborg duo, but he is slain as well. Tien goes against them next, but as expected, he also falls at the hands of the androids. Then Goku's best friend, Krillin, would be the one to fall in the onslaught against the androids. Lastly, and probably the least expected one to stand up against the androids, was Shatsu, who is mercilessly killed as well. Now the rest of the future timeline up until Trunks goes to the past would be the same as in the actual timeline. Gohan would still be the one training Trunks, with him still losing an arm from one of the fights against the androids. Then, of course, Gohan would still fall at the hands of the androids. This would still have been the catalyst for Trunks to go Super Saiyan for the first time. Eventually the Time Machine is still developed, and Trunks uses it to go back in time, and that would be the Trunks we had seen in the part 1 of this timeline. This Trunks is basically in no way different than the future Trunks we know, just the timeline he comes from is slightly different. Something worth mentioning is what would have happened to King Cold's empire after he was killed by the androids. Simply put, his empire would just shatter and cease to exist. There would be no ruler left that could take over, as Frieza and Cold are both dead. Most likely there would be 3 separate factions remaining, one for Cold, one for Frieza, and one for Cooler, with each trying to revive their previous leader. However, with the Dragon Balls on Earth being gone, and no one knowing where New Namek is, and the Super Dragon Balls obviously being out of the question, none of them are ever revived. With the Empire collapsing, this would obviously mean the Earth is no longer getting supplies from them, which is a negative for the humans. If all these supplies couldn't help with defeating the androids, they could have helped build stronger places they could seek protection in. Also, if it ever reached that point, the supplies would have been able to be used in rebuilding the Earth to how it used to be. Also, since they had communication links between the Empire and Earth, Bulma and Gohan would still try to reach out to the Empire every now and again, not knowing it collapsed. Even after Gohan falls at the hands of the androids, Bulma would still try to get in contact with them, as they would need the help now more than ever. These messages out to the Empire would be to try and get assistance from them, but as time goes on, the hope of getting help slowly fades. Years later, they do eventually get a response from a small remnant of the Cold Force, which tells them, the Cold Empire has been collapsed for years now. It split into different factions after King Cold died, but most planets just went on their way. So, we can no longer provide help to the people of other planets. It's every man for himself now. I'm sorry. Then after that, I never hear anything over the communication channel with the once great Empire again. It's nothing but complete radio silence, no matter how hard they try to keep contacting them, which, of course, she would eventually realize is pointless to stop trying to contact them. From there, she would focus all her time on building the time machine instead.